Hi everybody!
I have a lot of things to get off my chest regarding Persona 4 Revival. We're going to get to that as we dive into the video, but first, I've got a message for all the people who dogged on me in one of my previous P4R videos.
You were all wrong! Wrong!
Like I said, I've got a lot to get off of my chest here. The discourse surrounding the game has been interesting. Now, I'm throwing no shade at any of my fellow Atlus content creators, but they're all overlooking something that is glaringly obvious to myself and probably a bunch of others who actually use their brains. Atlus have a modus operandi they adhere to with their releases, at least in recent times. They typically reveal a game around 6 months before it ends up releasing, sometimes even sooner. I do not foresee this changing with Persona 4 Revival, especially when you consider the franchise will be 30 years old next year.
I'm old, Gandalf.
They're going to want a big Persona game out there. If that 6-month rule holds fast, we'd see P4R sometime in December. Do I think that's likely? No. I think what's more probable is we get the game releasing sometime in either the first or second quarter of next year. It'd be early enough in the year for Atlus to really celebrate Persona, while also releasing a few other titles throughout the year, because generally speaking, Atlus have a quarterly release, whether it be a big-time release or a smaller-scale project. And Persona 4 Revival is going to be a big-time release no matter what. Keep in mind, that was essentially the game that established Persona as more than just a super niche JRPG that was beloved. Just like its predecessor, Persona 3, was where the series had its first real rumblings of breaking into the mainstream. But, okay, let's look at why a release in either of next year's first 2 quarters makes sense. For those who aren't super up on when a quarter is in the business world, the first one runs from the first day in January through to March 31st, with Q2 being April 1st through June 30th. Next year is also looking relatively packed, as we'll have Resident Evil 9 in the first month of Quarter 1, and Grand Theft Auto 6, the biggest game releasing next year, coming in the late portion of the second quarter. Competition will be fierce next year. I think Atlus is going to want Revival out in the world before the market gets too flooded and it gets lost in the shuffle. Also, since both the first and second quarters have clearly defined watermarks in terms of when 2 of the tentpole releases are going to be, there is a ton of wiggle room between January and late May right now, making that an ideal time to release Persona 4 Revival. It will face some competition directly from Resident Evil Requiem, since fans of Resident Evil also tend to enjoy JRPGs in my experience. I'm not exactly sure why, but it is a commonality. The overlap between Persona's fanbase and Grand Theft Auto's is far smaller, so Atlus may hedge their bets a little bit on this one and actually be okay going up against Grand Theft Auto to some extent. So I would say this puts January and February out of the equation, so the absolute earliest I think we're looking at would be a March release, but considering the small amount of footage we have of the game so far, outright states the footage is early development. I think that is going to put Q1 out of the picture entirely, meaning we have April, May, and June to play with. I still think Atlus is going to want to get out in front of Grand Theft Auto to a degree, so I think we can comfortably eliminate the late parts of Q2, making April more likely. Keep in mind, the March and April release window has been kind to Atlus in the past, since that's when Persona 5 and Royal launched respectively in the West, which is what I think is the play here. Since releasing it between those two behemoths means gamers will have a bit more cash to play with, versus releasing too close to either one of them. So, gun to my head, if I had to give an answer as to when we might see Persona 4 Revival, I'm going to say April 2nd to the 9th is the best window of opportunity for the game. I know I'll face some pushback for that statement, so let's address the elephant in the room. So the trailer from the Xbox showcase was only 45 seconds long, which is not a lot to go off. We also can clearly see from the released footage that it's early development, which I mentioned earlier in the video. A lot of JRPG creators have jumped on that fact. I would say that isn't the biggest issue in the world, since the same was said of both Persona 3 Reload and Metaphor ReFantazio when they were both mentioned during a previous Xbox showcase. And we still got Persona 3 Reload not too long after that. A few have said P4R looks a lot crustier than Reload did, which, okay, I will give them that. But it's nowhere near as crusty as, say, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves was when it first got revealed. That looked like a full-blown tech demo. Whereas Revival, from what we have seen, looks like it's from a mid to late stage beta. But okay, let's address the very small amount of footage we did have, since I feel that is some important context. Considering this was revealed during an Xbox showcase, I feel like that has a big impact here. Consider this. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the typical Xbox gamer? Because let's be real, Persona doesn't exactly match up to that image, nor does any other Japanese game. Sure, we got a few of them shown off here, but the average Xbox fanboy really only wants something like a Halo or a Gears of War, possibly something like Fable if they happen to be into RPGs. So, not exactly what I'd call a weeb. So why is it we haven't gotten a lot of footage yet? I think it's down to Atlus merely wanting to shut up the critics, who have been complaining about the game not being revealed. This was merely a move to placate them, so that Atlus can actually go ham either at their own showcase sometime later this summer or during Tokyo Game Show, which begins on September 25th and ends on the 28th. Historically, Japanese developers tend to reveal a lot of things during that time frame, since they have their target audience captive, much like a fighting game dev would at EVO, which I'm surprised some of the fighting games we got revealed during the PlayStation State of Play, Summer Game Fest, and the Xbox Showcase weren't revealed there. But I digress. Overall, I think we probably see Persona 4 Revival again in the very near future, with September being the absolute latest we see it. I also imagine TGS is when we're going to get an official release date for the game. I'll be working on a video discussing why you should be excited for Persona 4 Revival in the very near future, so subscribe if that interests you. But when do you think we'll see Persona 4 Revival next? I personally think the game is much further along than people seem to think, especially when you consider Atlus have done a lot of hiring in recent years. Now check out my video discussing if the remake actually makes sense or not, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.